Hello artists, and welcome back to Art at Home with Mrs. Kellogg. Well, it's November and you know what that means. You're right, it's harvest season. So for today's lesson, we're going to create a one-point perspective harvest theme landscape. Now, meet me over at my workspace and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the lesson and the materials you will need. As I said before, we're going to create a one-point perspective harvest theme landscape. In this video, you're going to learn about one-point perspective, and we're also going to have a lot of fun creating a scarecrow using the elements of art: line, shape, color, and value. Now, the materials you will need are, you're going to need paper, a pencil, and if you have a fine tip black Sharpie marker to outline your shapes, you can use that, or you can always use a black colored pencil. You have a choice. You could use oil pastels or colored pencils for this project. And we're going to watercolor the background, so you're going to need your watercolor set, a brush, a cup filled with water, and also some paper towels, just in case. And remember, you always want to lay down either newspaper or an art mat before you start. So now would be a great time to pause your video, get your materials, meet me back here, and we'll get started. Did you get your materials? Great, then let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is one-point perspective. So one-point perspective is when you draw a horizon line and you can put one point anywhere on that line. So for example, I put it over here, and every line I drew from that one point. And that's called one-point perspective. So I'm going to show you two ways that you can do this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to draw my horizon line going across, and it's ground since we're doing a landscape, so if it's not perfectly straight, don't worry about that. And I'm left-handed, so I tend to put my point on the left side. So you can put your point anywhere you'd like. And one thing also to remember is you'll probably notice we have our paper going across horizontal, so that's called a landscape format when you have your paper going horizontal. So if I just want a flat straight field, I'm just going to use straight lines. So see, I'm going to draw from my one point. Okay, so that's one line. I go back to my point, I draw another line. And then I go back to my point and draw another line. So I think of that point as my home base. I just keep trying to returning to that line. Okay. And then when I'm done, I don't need that dot anymore. I kind of get rid of it. Okay? So that's a flat field. Now maybe you want to use more of a curved line to give it more of a hilly look. So you do the same thing. You draw the horizon line, put it anywhere on that line that you'd like. Okay, I'm going to put mine right there. And then this time I'm going to really curve and see what happens. Okay, so then I'm going to have a different look. So you can experiment with different lines and see which style of lines you like. Okay, now that you've finished your one-point perspective field, the next step is to put the scarecrow in. So think of, you want to draw what's closest to you first. So for the scarecrow, the first thing I want to do to show you this is I'm actually going to draw the scarecrow separately so you can see how I do it a little bit better. So whenever I am drawing a face or a portrait, what I like to do is to draw the nose in first because it's easier to line up the eyes. So I'm going to start with the nose and I'm going to sketch a triangle in. But if you prefer, again, you could always sketch that oval or circle in. Okay, if that helps you. But just know you might need to adjust the shape of the head. Okay, so now I have the triangle nose. So I go out to the corners and I go straight up, and it makes it really easy to place the eyes. Okay, so I have the guide dots in, sketch those circles. So I go around a few times till I get what I like. Okay, now I'm going to erase the lines I don't need, and I'm going to finish up my drawing. Now it's time to put the mouth in. A lot of times I either use 2 fingers or a thumb, and that's about where I'm going to place that mouth. So I'm going to put ears on mine, and then I'll place the hat on there. Okay, so for ears, a lot of times I will use an upside down J. Okay, and I'll notice I have them on a diagonal. Now I've shown you how to draw the face, and if you'd like, you could always put these little thin rectangles to make it look like hay is coming out of the hat. Now it's time to draw my scarecrow in my landscape. And while I'm demonstrating that, I'll show you how to draw the hat and also the body of the scarecrow. So I may draw through some of these lines, which means then I'll be erasing. So you can sketch the head if that helps you. But then I'm going to start with that triangle. And I'm going to erase this line out. Okay, for ears, I'm going to use a tilted J. Okay, now it's time for the hat. So what I'm going to do is, first thing is, I'm going to put a rainbow line connecting here. Then I'm going to come from the back of that ear. Okay, and if this line goes this way, this is going to be the same, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to come around the ear like this. See how it's almost like I'm drawing a backwards C. And I'm going to do the same on this side. And then I'm just going to come up and around and connecting it. So see how I'm coming like so. Okay. And then, so that's the size of the head. Going to curve. So you can make it pointy, round, however you want to do it. And so since I drew through some lines, I'm going to erase that out. The neck is a stick. So I'm going to think rectangle. And now I'm going to draw the shoulder line, and I'm going to, since it's propped up on some sticks, I'm going to have the arms swinging out this way. And then I'm going to put a V here for the shirt. I'm going to put some buttons. And again, any lines I draw through, what I like to do is erase them out. Rectangle for the arm, I come in, swing down. Rectangle for the arm, swing in. See, and then I'm going to make some hay come out of those arms. Now I want it more three-dimensional, so I'm going to finish that oval. See how it comes from behind. That would be shaded in. And you could just leave a solid shirt if you like, or if you like the idea of having squares, so round body, I'm using some curved lines here. So you could make it striped, or you could make it a plaid shirt. So, and I've got my scarecrow, and notice this. See, this will look hollow when I use a darker color, or I could do that with marker. Okay, so now my scarecrow's done. Now it's up to you what you would like to put in the field. So it's harvest season, so if you want pumpkins, corn, and you could have it be a night scene or the sun setting, whatever you'd like to do. And for example, for the pumpkin, curved line, curved line, curved line, and then I want to use a curve for the stem, wiggly oval, come back in. And I want to put a line behind to give it a little bit more dimension. So I'm going to tuck that in. So now I've got that three-dimensional pumpkin. Okay, then when I'm done with that, it's time to trace. So now I finished tracing and it's time to go to color. But before I do that, I look and make sure I get rid of any pencil lines that I don't want. So now I'm going to think about color. So one thing I want to talk to you about is the idea of color and value. So notice this, I didn't make the sun one color. I'm making it lighter going to a darker color. So I like to blend my colors, and you can do this with the oil pastels or colored pencils. And if I make this whole field the one shade of green, I'm going to lose all these shapes. So I'm going to keep thinking of that idea of light next to dark. And you don't have to do a green field. You can change it up. Okay, so now it's time to go to color. So remember how I figure out if my colors are light and dark. For example, I'm going to put the colors next to each other. I'm going to go, since this is lighter, I go with a darker color there. And then I'm just going to continue thinking that way when I go in with my colors. And the other thing I think about is design and pattern, and that principle of design repetition. Okay, and remember, if anything's too dark, white's a tint, you can always lighten if you need to. Okay, so see how this is lighter and this is a little dark, so light next to medium, and then light next to medium, and where it meets, I mix it. And the same with the sun. So I'm going to continue finishing my color, and then my next step is to go to watercolor. Since I'm doing a sky, I want to paint my paper with just water first. And remember, every time you use a new color, you're going to clean your brush, and you have your paper towel if things get too wet. So now I've finished with my 1-point perspective harvest theme landscape. I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and always remember, when you are creating art, to relax, have lots of fun, and keep creating.